Thanks for tuning in to this week's edition of the Brad and Matt Show. As always, he's Brett, I'm Matt, and we took a little bit of a break, just a little week break. Both of us had some different things going on in our lives. I got married.
Yeah, buddy.
So there's that. Yeah. So anyway, so we're all back and trying to get back in the swing of things. And so while we were away, the NBA Finals wrapped up.
While we were away, they started and wrapped up.
They did. They started and wrapped up. Actually, it played out like we thought. The Warriors 1-6. Both of us predicted it. For a while, though, I think we were both a little bit feeling a little shaky in our picks.
Yeah, there was definitely a moment where I tweeted at a couple of Cleveland fans that, you know, if they end up winning the title, I want to see some like quick hitter Vine footage tweeted immediately from them because Cleveland hasn't won a title in either of their lifetimes in any significant sport. So they were pretty excited. They thought that was a legit chance, and then, you know. The Golden State Warriors ended up winning 3 straight and taking the series in 6 games.
Correct. So I mean, it was exciting there for a little bit, and then you could kind of tell after Cleveland took those 2 games, one at the Warriors court, which I thought was really impressive. Honestly, they could have won game 1 too. I mean, they were in position to steal that game as well. You could just tell though, the second game in Cleveland, they came out really flat and really tired, and yeah, it just didn't seem like they ever really recovered. I mean, they stuck in games for a while, but then the Warriors would just go on this, like, for example, there was one game they closed out like on a 19-5 run. Like, can't do that.
Yeah, and obviously the bench is depleted, so everybody that was playing for Cleveland was playing way more minutes. Even LeBron was playing a lot more minutes, than he was used to throughout the regular season, and for most of the other playoff series because they still had a healthy Kyrie and a healthy Kevin Love. So sorry, I'm getting over being sick. So if I sound funny and start coughing all over, that's what's up with that. But so yeah, you're right, they got tired, and then also that was the same time that Steve Kerr and Golden State made that switch to bringing Iggy in as the starter and putting Bogut on the bench, and it totally changed, I think, the direction that this series was going.
It's true, and it's a copycat league, like several other sports, and I would anticipate that people are going to start looking, at small ball as being a really legitimate option, something to go to. If your bigs aren't athletic enough to be able to keep up with these guys, it's going to cause problems, and especially in transition. And you're asking a lot for a guy like Timothy Mozgov to try and run out and chase a guy like Draymond Green, for example. That's just, if Draymond's hitting that shot, it's not going to end well. You know what? And if you follow Brett on Twitter, he was very unhappy with a certain player on the Cleveland Cavaliers who was just getting a lot of love from Cav Nation, and kind of little mini storyline. This guy named Dellavedova who came in and was doing his thing, and everyone's like, "Oh, the defensive stopper, stopping Chef Curry."
and then what happened, right? The guy had
he came back to reality.
3-game series, a little mini Linsanity moment for him. And the guy, I don't know if he hustles, plays dirty. We've discussed that before. But my Lord, that guy can't even throw alley-oops to like 6'10" guys. His alley-oop passes suck. His floater sucks. His three-pointers stopped dropping. And then Chef Curry started cooking him out on the outside, and he just put on some roller skates, all right? And that's how it should have been. Steph, those first couple of games, and Klay Thompson, who I don't think showed up for shit this entire series, and they still won without him doing anything, really. Which I think obviously shows how good Golden State was as a team, where Steph and Clay didn't start super great in the series. Obviously, they lost 2 of those 3 games, but they still had enough as a team to get close and then, win the final 3. But, Dellavedova, that I don't know how many jerseys they probably sold to that guy or T-shirts or whatever, but I can't imagine there's going to be too many people. They're going to continue to wear that around after those final 3 games where he was just pathetic and terrible.
It was not pretty. Golden State was leaving him wide open. He was missing shots.
Brandon Jennings, by the way, tweeted, check it. He thinks it, writes it down, looks at it, says it's okay, and hits the tweet button. That Dellavedova should start looking for a $40 million deal. Come on. He's like, I think you should ask for 40. He said, why not? Let's be serious. If that guy's lucky to make $4 million in any given contract, Kai's probably lucky.
Yeah, I don't know. Some team might be foolish enough to pay him money. Hopefully not the Milwaukee Bucks, but some team might. And another guy that was kind of an unsung hero. We'll get to Iguodala obviously, but Sean Livingston really caused problems for them. Really big, 6'6" point guard that 6'7". He would just take his guy into the post, and not to pick on Delly more, but he could not defend Livingston very good at all.
Yeah, and what's great about that too is you bring in a guy that 6'6", 6'7", like you said. He can run the point, so you don't have to have Curry handling the ball. They can play together, or if you want to, sit Curry for a minute, you still have a guy that's able to do a lot within the offense. It's a lot different than Curry, obviously. With Livingston being more of kind of like a slasher, get to the rim type guy than a great outside shooter that Curry is. But, that worked really well, and you bring him in, and you don't get smaller, even though you're playing small ball. So you take somebody out, but he's just as tall as almost, Draymond Green, who was playing center for you. So, that was kind of like a very unique situation. And for him to come to where he is now, considering where he was that 2009 or something?
The injury? Yeah.
Yeah, where his leg.
It was pretty devastating.
I think he tore all 3, the ACL, MCL, and I don't know, I'm going to make some up, PCL or something in there. And then there was more issues. It was a legitimate, I swear I was reading something, I don't know if it was true, but an amputation would have been a possibility there for that injury. It's holy shit. And then he comes back and he's playing. He bounced around for a long time. So, for him to get to where he is now and be confident in himself and his body and another team to give him that shot and for him to prove his worth, I think is a really nice story for him and the Warriors.
It is. So you bashed one Australian. I'm going to bash another Australian. So Andrew Bogut, really? That guy stinks. He's getting paid way too much money. Are you serious? Mozgov was owning him in the paint. I don't know any other way to say it. And then Steve Kerr brings him in, and he still manages to suck. Off the bench, I don't know. I had nothing. That guy is terrible. Timothy Mozgov owned him.
And again,
Steve Kerr to try something else. Pretty much forced him to say, "Hey, my big isn't keeping up. We gotta try something different. Let's go small ball. Let's try and take their bigs out of the game because they can't keep up or something." But oh my god, how many times did Bogut get dunked on?
I don't know. Do we have a stat list for this? Can we check this? Probably not.
I wish we did, because granted, I will say that, to be fair, I'd say both Mozgov and Tristan Thompson are both above average big men when it comes to being able to catch the ball and make an adjustment in the air and throw it down still. They're both really good at that. Especially in Mozgov. I can't tell you how many times someone just lobs the ball. And of course, Bogut's standing there in no man's land. It gets dunked on, and I'm like, are you serious?
Yeah, and I think, that was kind of sad. But I think that his whole situation kind of leads to the culture of Golden State, right? So they put him on the bench. He's not playing a lot of minutes in those last 3 games. But he's the first one up, cheering. He's having a good time still on the bench, rooting for his teammates. Iguodala, after being a starter pretty much his whole career, comes off the bench for the whole year in the regular season and the playoffs up until Game 4. And I think that's something that helped. Steve Kerr kind of probably brought along to them and just got everybody to buy into what it means to be a team and what it's going to take to win a championship and to have that sort of success.
Yeah, I mean, obviously Steve Kerr's been on several championship teams, so he understands what it's like from a player's perspective. And he himself was a role player, I think, on a lot of those teams. And, like a guy like Iguodala, you just named, coming off the bench, a guy like David Lee, you're talking about two former All-Stars that buy in to being able to come off the bench and contribute where they can. And then you mentioned, the benching of Bogut. Well, a guy who started a lot, obviously, throughout the year, buying in and still being supportive. And obviously, in my opinion, when you make it that far in the finals, unless you're a total douche, you're probably going to be cheering on your team.
Right. Yeah, you're probably right. And I think another thing, too, that, Festus Ezeli ended up playing a lot when they did want to bring a big in. And he did pretty well. He was a guy that, developed into one of the better, say a better backup center in the league. Like, okay, what does that mean? Well, he came in and held his own, when they needed him to do so. Because there was times, obviously, I think it was Game 4 where Moskov scored like 28 or something. Like he had a really nice game. Because that was the first game that, Iggy started and they didn't really have anyone down low and they just kept lobbing it up there for him and he was scored a ton of points. So first for Kerr and the staff to make the adjustments to say, hey, if we need to go big, we're going to go with somebody a little younger, probably a little faster, a little more agile to try to keep up with some of the screens and then the body up on Moskov. I think that was a good adjustment for them too.
Yeah. So, with that being said, obviously the Cavs lost. So LeBron, where does this leave him? He is now 2-4 in finals. Honestly, I felt like in watching a lot of those games, I know like people were kind of harping on him like, oh, well, he shot bad in the fourth quarter. Well, it's not. What about the other 3 quarters? Like, not everything just happens, in the fourth. Like, I get it. Like, that's important time. Like, but you wouldn't be in the position you're in the fourth if he doesn't, put up the 35 points he already has at that point. I felt like, pretty much averaging a triple-double throughout the whole series. He didn't shoot the greatest percentage-wise, but at the same time, where else is he supposed to get the offense? There wasn't a whole lot of other guys hitting shots. Our X factor for the series that we both said in J.R. Smith, he was pretty much cold the whole series.
So you almost brought them back in that final game. That was pretty exciting. 20 seconds right there.
That's true. So I guess how do you feel that LeBron performed?
I think he performed about as well as you could expect anybody to perform in that situation with the surrounding cast and team that he had. It's like, okay, so sure, he's not shooting a great percentage, but literally like all 5 guys on the number 1 defense in the league, mind you, are pretty much focusing on you because if other guys are making shots, we'll live and die by that. That's fine, I guess. That's probably sort of what was happening there. But there were times where LeBron would beat a guy off a dribble, get into the lane, and there's 2 more guys just waiting for him. So some of his, easier layups or dunks that he might have had weren't going to be there. And then there were times, in that situation, you say, well, pass it out. Okay, well, he does. But then when guys are breaking shots, how much confidence can you have in those guys? And he still ended up, like you said, with almost triple doubles with guys not even performing that well around him necessarily. So, that's he lost, but it was still one of the better performances I think you could say overall, given that cast, and to win 2 games against the best team in the NBA, a team that was the best team at home and probably the best team on the road all season. I mean, you stole 2 games. I mean, that's probably about as good as you could have expected. Anything more than that, and like you said, they were a shot away from stealing the first 3 games of the series and maybe pushing this thing to 7 or maybe even winning the title somehow. Who knows what else would have happened, but it's probably as good as you could say. And yeah, he's 2-4. Okay, well that's fine. He took 2 fucking terrible, shitty, awful Cleveland teams there. Okay, that's about as good as Cleveland's ever been in the sport. Okay, like
since the Jim Brown era.
So, I mean, I can't count those ones against him because they probably shouldn't have even been there in the first place. Well, this year a little different getting there because they had those guys for the most part that were healthy and helping him get to that point. But like at the finals, he didn't have a team that was worthy of being a finals team those 2 years in Cleveland. If you want to get on him, Dwayne, and Chris Bosh, I guess, for losing to Dallas, I'd get that one too, especially since that was
LeBron pretty much disappeared that series.
Right, and that's what I was going to say, especially because he kind of was non-existent for parts of that series. But the one against the Spurs, I mean, that Spurs team, the way they moved the ball and the type of team that they were, it was just a really good team. Somebody had to lose. So if they would have beaten them, you'd have said, well, hey, those Spurs teams, they've lost 2 in a row now. Well, okay, yeah, somebody's got to lose. You're there. But, with how good those teams were, I give him credit for having those 2 Cleveland teams there and performing as well, as he did those seasons.
Right.
I can't count that against him. Like, at worst, I say he's got 2 wins, he's got 2 losses, and he's got like 2 that I'm not even counting. Well, I'm counting it as being there, but I'm not saying it's a loss. Like it's like a tie. I don't know what you want to say it is, but
right. And I was thinking about this too. So honestly, like it takes a little luck to win the NBA title. I mean, obviously injuries play into it. Cleveland, unfortunately, had bad luck in that regard, and it kind of the way things fell. I mean, if you look at what the Warriors went through, they didn't have to play the Spurs, and they didn't have to play the Clippers. Instead, they got probably the toughest team they had to play was Memphis. I felt like Memphis' style was hard on them. But then in the finals, they have to go against the Rockets instead of the Clippers, and then obviously the Clippers knocked out the Spurs. I mean, I think the Spurs and Warriors would have been a really interesting series because both those 2 teams focus so much on ball movement, and that would have been really fun.
That would have been a beautiful series to watch.
That would have been awesome. Or even to be honest, the Clippers were playing really good basketball there for a while. They were getting stuff out of J.J. Redick and Austin Rivers, and no one wants to, for whatever reason, talk about Blake Griffin, but he's a really good player now. And obviously CP3 has never even been to the conference finals, so that would have been interesting. But maybe, I don't know, as far as LeBron goes, I mean, I think, okay, so yeah, he's 2-4, but, well, if everyone's going to harp on him, I mean, where does that leave other guys? Like, Chris Paul's never been to a finals. He's arguably probably the best point guard of, like, that generation.
Kevin Durant's won, and they got crushed.
I mean, who else do you put in that like elite superstar category? I mean, you could probably put Steph Curry there now, but I would like to see him do it more consistently. Although Klay Thompson calls his teammate the best player in the world. Well, that's easy to say when you're not doing anything, Klay Thompson. You weren't even the best Thompson in the series.
Plus, I think that was kind of a little ribbing at LeBron for LeBron calling himself the best player in the world in the press conference before the game.
Well,
and then
no one's going to argue with
it. Probably not. But you mentioned that luck thing, and I think that does factor in to it a little bit. I think another interesting storyline, though, from the Golden State's path was it was a stat that they beat every team that had another first-team All-NBA player on it.
True. And that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, we harp on it a lot, too, about how basketball is a game where, one guy can make that much of a difference, and how, like, you need to have some sort of superstar, like an all-star type guy on the team. And even though, like you said, there were injuries, I think that obviously speaks a lot to how you still need to have a supporting cast around that superstar that's capable, because the Warriors did go through and beat every single one of those guys, and those guys just obviously those other teams didn't have the cast around them that a guy like Steph had with his team at Golden State.
This is true. Although it's also true that every single one of those teams that they played, ironically, the team had an injury of some kind, except for the Warriors. Just put it out there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess that's kind of where a little luck happens. But you mentioned supporting cast, and so Andre Iguodala won the Finals MVP award. Are you okay with that? And if you're not okay with it, who else should have won the MVP?
I'm okay with it. I think him being inserted into the starting line, and even when he wasn't starting, those first couple of games where he was coming off the bench, he was still playing really, really well.
Yeah.
In those
and that
games.
just shows how deep Golden State is. Like
Mm-hmm.
really like Iguodala be starting for, probably 20 out of the 30 teams. Like, come on.
Yeah, exactly. So, and there's actually a lot of stories that you can read online about this. I'm going to go off a low mini tangent side track here, but about how, obviously remember Golden State was one of those teams that almost traded for Kevin Love. They almost gave up Draymond Green and Klay Thompson. Remember us debating that?
Yes, I do.
Where they would have been had that happened, right? I mean, that's two starters. And they didn't know that Draymond Green at the time was going to be the type of player that he became this year. I don't think anybody really did. And like when that became obvious, that's when they had to go to Iggy and they're like, hey, Iggy, do you mind taking the seat for a little bit? Because we got some other guys that we're going to need to play. And that's, Iggy's, unselfishness. And he was he was the man in Philly for a long time. After Allen Iverson was there, he was the other AI. And then he went to Denver, and they got knocked out of the playoffs by Golden State. I think it was 2013. And after that series, because his contract was up, I think, with Denver, and he like went to Golden State. He was like, "Hey guys, I want to play for you. Like, so I'll wait. I'm not gonna sign. Just clear cap space so I can sign with you." Mm-hmm. And it took him like 5 days, and they had to trade a bunch of stuff to. Where was it? I don't know where it was that they traded, but so he had to wait to get signed even by them. But he knew that's where he wanted to go. Because he thought that team could win a championship, and obviously for him to be the NBA MVP or the Finals MVP, it was kind of a neat story for him. But if it wasn't going to be him, obviously the easy answer would have been Steph, right? Because best player on the team that won, sort of thing. But obviously, I think the best player that had the best Finals was probably LeBron.
Yeah, I agree with you. Looking back on it, if you're going to give it to someone on the Warriors, I mean, Iguodala really did make an impact for them. But yeah, the kind of numbers LeBron averaged, I understand that, like, the whole giving it to the team that wins. But for me, I felt bad because I just felt like LeBron really deserved that award just for getting that team there and for putting up and putting the effort that he did to try to win. And so, I mean, I don't know, I felt bad. But at the same time, I mean, I understand, like, Iguodala was on the winning team. And apparently, so this is the second year in a row this has happened. By the way, we're just getting used to seeing LeBron in the finals, it seems like, every year. But where I was going with that was apparently if you guard LeBron, it gives you extra bonus points. Because this is the second year in a row that the guy who's guarded LeBron ends up with the MVP.
That's true, yeah, because it was Kawhi, right? So I found a stat here. Somebody tweeted it out, and I found it at a different spot. When Andre Iguodala was in the game, LeBron shot 38%, and the Cavs were minus 55. When Iguodala was on the bench, LeBron shot a little bit better, up to 44%, and the Cavs were actually plus 30. So, the plus minus of this individual player obviously takes into account who else he's playing with and who's on the bench at the time. So it's not like an end-all be-all stat, but I thought that was a pretty interesting stat that, when he was in the game, LeBron played a little bit worse, and the Cavs overall got outscored by a lot more than when Iguodala was on the bench.
That's true. Yeah, I mean, that's definitely interesting. The funny thing is that way back when the Warriors got rid of Mark Jackson, there's all sorts of talk. Is Steve Kerr gonna go to New York and be with his friend Phil Jackson, or is he gonna stay closer to home and coach the Warriors? And he obviously chose the Warriors, but looking back at that, that would have been. Just think what would have happened if he would have chose New York instead.
That would have sucked for him, for one. I don't know who the Warriors would have got. And they actually, throughout the whole process, they said they didn't interview anybody else. They were just going to wait to see what Kerr said. I mean, they had guys on the list that they would have called up had he turned them down, but they didn't even get into the process of talking to anybody else. So if Kerr would have gone to New York, I mean, obviously the team, like the players would have been the same in Golden State, but the coach and somebody that was as open, I think, to listening to everybody in the organization. Because you talk about, you know, the reason that Iguodala started in the first place was like a 28-year-old, they call him kid, intern, or whatever his position is, kind of made this suggestion at like 3 o'clock in the morning, sent Steve Kerr a text, and Steve woke up, saw it, and said, okay, we'll give it a try. So I think that was kind of like a neat little story. So I don't know if they would have had, say, Alvin Gentry, I think his name is, who's an assistant there now, who actually just got hired to be somewhere else.
Yeah, he's the new coach of the Pelicans.
Yeah, so maybe they would have hired him as the head coach. Who knows? But yeah, they would have been interesting for Steve, because his season would have been almost complete opposite, being on the best team to being on one of the worst.
That's true. Of course, on the other side, you have David Blatt, who actually, I don't know if you knew this or not, but he was actually hired by the Warriors first as one of Kerr's assistants. And then Cleveland ended up calling him up and offering him the head coaching job, and he's like, "Well, I just got offered the head coaching job. Sorry, Steve."
I did not know that.
Yeah, so he would have been an assistant on Golden State, actually. So that's kind of funny. But obviously, everyone kind of saw throughout the year the relationship, you know, between Blatt and LeBron, and I mean, there was a playoff game where Blatt tried to call timeout and they didn't have any. Would it cost them the game?
But it probably cost them the series. That was the Chicago series, right?
Yes, that was a big moment in that. Dude, yeah, that was a big moment in the Chicago series. And the Blatt gets that timeout. I mean, that's a tech because they don't have any timeouts.
Yeah, so that would have been interesting. I also think it's pretty funny, you know, talking about this. Yeah, and he obviously drew up his own play on the inbound play. I forget what team that was, what game that was. That was Chicago also.
That was Chicago, yeah. He told Blatt, I'm not inbounding this.
But ESPN's Mark Stein has a story up about, you know, Blatt and LeBron's relationship. I'm just going to read a little blurb from it real quick. LeBron emasculated Blatt in ways that are simply unbecoming of a player of LeBron's legend-in-the-making stature. I saw it from close range in my role as a sideline reporter through the finals for ESPN Radio. LeBron essentially calling timeouts and making substitution. LeBron openly barking at Blatt after decisions he didn't like. LeBron huddling frequently with Cavs assistant coach Ty Lue, and so often looking at anyone other than Blatt. So needless to say, there's some sort of coaching issue there. Do you think he's going to stay? Like, if you're management, you're going to look at LeBron and you're going to be like, hey, if he stays, will you stay? Like, I don't know, because obviously the owner of the team is just tried his hardest to try to make sure LeBron comes back with the championship. So what do you think that situation is going to end up being?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think Blatt's out. I think Cleveland needs to hire someone else. I don't know. Maybe they bring in Mark Jackson. I don't know. Why is that funny?
The guy who intentionally like threw players under the bus and everything when he was in Golden State. There's a story where Mark Jackson told a lie to the rest of the team about Festus Ezeli. So the teammates confronted Festus, and Festus almost broke down crying because of what he was accused of doing. It was like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, why are you doing this to your team, Mark Jackson? Come on, man. You're a team builder, not a team, like, destroyer. Like, get these guys together, not fight against each other.
Yeah, that's true. I don't know. I think it's going to be weird to say it because how many coaches would go to the conference finals in their rookie year coaching the NBA and then get fired? But could really see it happening, and I think management is going to do everything they possibly can to keep LeBron happy.
Which probably means elevating Tyronn Lue to head coach. They seem to have a good relationship.
Possibly, or whoever else LeBron wants them to try to bring in.
Because I remember when this hiring first happened, like LeBron wasn't on the team yet, so he didn't have a say.
Nope, he didn't. Yeah, it already been, blatted out or already been named at that point and everything.
So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens with that. It would be strange for a coach that was in the finals, I think, to get fired, but at the same time, if you got to try to keep your star player happy, yeah, you might do what you got to do, and kind of sucks for the coach. But I mean, let's be honest. I think LeBron's part player coach anyway. It's not like he's probably listening to too many other guys a whole lot. Right. I don't know why I get that feeling, but I do.
No, I agree with that. So I guess that kind of leads us to our last little topic. So what do you think the future is of both teams? We'll start with the team that won in the Warriors. What do you? Obviously, I'm sure we both agree that their future is bright. People are kind of saying they might be the next dynasty. I'm not ready to jump that far. But what do you think?
I mean, they have a shot. Now, it's really hard because obviously, there's going to be a new NBA salary cap structure soon with some new TV deal and TV money. So if they can kind of just hold those guys off for a couple of years before that money comes in, it'd be easier to keep everyone around. Obviously, they have a great deal right now with Steph Curry being like the 6th highest paid guy on his own team. It's kind of like, when quarterbacks are rookies and they're really good, kind of like Seattle and Russ Wilson for those couple of years, you can build around them because you don't have money invested in that spot. But it'll be harder when he gets his money. Clay's going to get his money. Draymond Green, after the year he had, is going to get paid. But I think they have the sort of system and they have the guys there that I know they're going to keep as a nucleus to try to keep that motion going. And they'll probably have the ability to find other guys that will fit in those certain roles. And I think some guys might look at what they did this year and kind of understand that that's the situation going in, is that you might not be the guy, or you won't be the guy, because obviously Steph will be the guy. So they'll need to make sure that in the future, if they're going to stay dynasty-type player role, they're going to need to find those role guys that fit in. Or maybe they could be like the Spurs, right? Like some of their guys take less money than they could probably get on the open market just to stay with the team. I think like Duncan only makes $10 million a year, which is also kind of low. Kind of.
Right. Yeah, I mean that I pretty much agree with a lot of that. It'll be interesting to see how they keep the team together in the future. Obviously, Steph Curry is going to get, whatever the most amount of money. He probably deserves it. It'll be interesting to see what they do when it comes to some other. I mean, they already reportedly are letting David Lee go.
Which is going to save them some good amount of money, I think.
Yes, it will. Yeah, I'll say actually save them quite a bit of money. But yeah, so I think they'll be good. I guess the reason I just question if they'll be able to be a dynasty is because the West is really good, and they got through this year, and obviously good enough to win the title and everything. But next year maybe they play someone else who's hot at the time, or maybe they're the team that has like an injury or two, like stuff like that can really derail, I feel like, a potential dynasty. On the other side, you have Cleveland, who has it was like 10 or 11 like possible free agents, like some ridiculously high. There's only like one or two. There's Kyrie's under contract, and I think there was like one other player that was under contract, but I don't remember. It was pretty slim. Like everyone else is either a restricted free agent, or a free agent or some other
Player options or
player
something.
option, yeah, something, or team option. So obviously, if you're the Cavs, I think it's important that you try to keep LeBron happy. Yeah, try and get Kyrie back healthy. Be interesting to see what they can work out with Kevin Love. Um,
He's gone.
he's gone. Brett says he's gone. Interesting. Even after he said that he wanted to play in Cleveland. Well, I mean that was
Nobody wants to play in Cleveland unless you're playing with LeBron. So I guess that's still an option. But
I know the team has an option to pick up Mozgov. I want to say it's only for like for like some $1 million is like his team option. It's like, well, yeah, it's a no-brainer, obviously.
yeah, is Anderson Varejao still under contract, or is
this he might be the other one. Yeah, you're right. It's him and Kyrie, I believe, are the two. I feel like you got to pay Tristan Thompson. Tristan Thompson's a restricted free agent.
So they
I thought he played really well.
So they're able to match anybody else's offer and go over it because they'll have the extra year they can give him or something.
Yeah, I think that's how that works.
Though,
I know that they get first dibs to match.
Okay. I was going to say, as I mentioned before, though, I think Jimmy Butler, because of the new contract thing and when that money's supposed to be coming in, he's turning down a long-term deal because he just wants something shorter. So when that money comes in, he can sign a new deal with the new money and kind of
banking on himself.
Yeah, so I wonder if some of these guys aren't going to be able to do that, just sign shorter-term deals for themselves, bank on winning some titles with LeBron or getting there and trying to prove how good they can be, and then jet sink somewhere else after that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I mean, really, as far as the Cavs go, I mean, they're still going to have LeBron. They'll have Kyrie, obviously. No offense to Kevin Love, but I think Kyrie's the more important player. His ability and pick and roll, and that was one of the big things in the series. Not to go back to that, but just quick. But Dellavedova, there was no secret. Like, he's not quick enough to turn the corner on the pick and roll where Kyrie is. Kyrie can be a spot up shooter. You can kick it to him and he'll be open and he'll make it. And he can he can beat his guy 1-on-1 too. Like, Kyrie is a really good offensive player, no question about it.
That's definitely something that they missed. Obviously, LeBron can create his own shot and create shot for others. And Kyrie's got that ability also where, if you need to put him in an ISO situation, he's usually pretty good at getting that, creating for himself. And obviously, he can create for others. And I know there was some contention earlier in the playoffs where he had like 0 assists or something. And LeBron in the postgame was like, wow, that's just Kyrie being Kyrie. I don't know what he's supposed to mean by that, but that's what he said. So, maybe he doesn't feel the need to always create for others, but he's got that ability to if he wanted to.
Right. So I guess as far as the future of the Cavs goes, we'll kind of have to wait and see with so many like free agents and stuff. But honestly, as long as they have LeBron and Kyrie comes back healthy, there's no reason they shouldn't, in my mind, be favorites to win the East. Probably regardless of who the supporting cast is, because I think 2 players of that caliber in the Eastern Conference it's just going to overwhelm other teams, I think.
Yeah, if LeBron opts in and stays, you have Kyrie, and then you have those big. I assume Mozgov and probably Thompson stays. That'll be interesting to see what Thompson gets on the market.
Yes.
And if the Cavs feel the need to match that, because if somebody offers him big and the Cavs have to match, and then all of a sudden, that's going to reduce the cap space to fill in the other 8 spots on the roster. That can be a little difficult situation for them. So, but I agree. I mean, you have LeBron, you have Kyrie, and as long as you don't fill up the rest of those spots with Dellavedova clones, you're probably going to be a top 2 or 3 seed in the East and have a very good chance at making the finals every year.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Unless Kevin Durant goes to Washington, then we're talking about a whole different animal.
Yes. Then we're talking. In fact, you know what? I would love to see it because right now I feel like the majority of superstars are playing over in the Western Conference, and that's part of the reason why the Eastern Conference is the way it is. I mean, the star players just aren't there. I mean, I don't know if I consider Derrick Rose a superstar anymore. I don't think so. Jimmy Butler's really good, but
Not a superstar.
not a superstar. Oh man, if you
Paul
add Kevin
George
Durant, Paul George was on the verge
close.
of being a superstar, and then that injury happened, and I was sad. Boy, though, if you add Kevin Durant to Washington, because I think John Wall's like a borderline guy, like he's right there, but you pair him with Kevin Durant, that would be a lot of fun.
Agreed. Oh yeah. So that would definitely change the outcome of whether or not staying in the East with LeBron. You're almost guaranteed a shot at making the finals because you're probably going to make the conference finals every year. So that would be a little bit different if that happens. But yeah, I mean we're a long way from something like that probably happening. So something fun to think about though.
Yeah, for sure. So with that, I mean that kind of wraps up our finals discussion. It was a fun year in the NBA. Well, I was right on a few things. I picked Cleveland to make it to the finals.
Predicted that early.
Let's see though. But so next week already is the NBA draft. We're both pretty excited about that. A couple Wisconsin kids are gonna get drafted in the first round, so I'm very excited to see where they go. Really hope that. Well, one, I hope the Bucks stay in Milwaukee. Two, would really like to see us get either Sam Decker or Frank Kaminsky, which honestly, right now I keep reading draft stuff, and even Chad Ford says, oh, they could, both of them for teams that could possibly draft them, the Bucks are there. So they fall in our range. It's just a matter if they'll be there or not.
Didn't Chad Ford just have Decker going like 8 in his latest one?
Yes, he did. So I think, was it the Pistons?
Detroit.
Yes, it was the Pistons.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Poor Sam. I'd feel bad if he had to
sad. And I think he had Kaminsky going to the Suns, I believe. I think it was the Phoenix Suns. Dang it.
We're going to have to trade up. Maybe we can package Michael Carter-Williams.
Why do you hate on that guy so much?
I just do. Okay? It's my right.
He makes threes in the video game.
He does not make threes in the video game. I mean, once in a while, but, broken clock's right twice a day, so.
That's true. But yeah, so hopefully we can get Cortland on, and we'll do I don't know, we haven't decided yet, I guess, but we're going to do some sort of draft, either special or mock draft, something. It'll be something fun. So be sure to check that out next week. But yeah, otherwise, I think that's all we have for this week. So until next week.